Welcome to Around and Around, the OCD Circle. My name is Elizabeth, and I have been living with obsessive-compulsive disorder for over 60 years. I am not a therapist or a member of the medical community. I am just an ordinary person like yourself who will be sharing my thoughts and experiences with you, with the hope that you will feel less alone. If you don't have OCD, I hope you will learn some information that will help you understand this disorder better. Some of the topics I will be covering may be triggering for you as a listener. If so, I apologize in advance. Since I don't know what your triggers are, please refer to the episode summary in the show notes before listening to each episode. If at any time you feel like hurting yourself or ending your life, please call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988 if you are in the United States. It is open 24 hours a day, and you will be connected with the nearest crisis center to receive immediate counseling and local mental health referrals. Now, on to today's episode. Welcome back, everyone, to Around and Around the OCD Circle podcast. I want to remind you that this podcast now has a Facebook page where we can discuss OCD with others who also struggle with this disorder and understand. The link is below in the show notes, along with my other social media links. Today's episode will be part one of my fascinating conversation with Jaimi McPeek, founder of the mental health awareness movement Flip of a Coin. Jaimi not only discusses having OCD since a very young age, but how she has survived other disorders, including anorexia nervosa and a suicide attempt at the age of 18. I am sure you will find this conversation enjoyable. Hi, Jaimi. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Sure. So my name is Jaimi McPeek and currently live in Florida. We're going to be moving to Virginia actually in March, so I'm excited for that. I grew up in the performing industry, was a professional performer for about 6 or 7 years, danced at theme parks, acted in a few films, did some singing, musical theater, and actually just recently I broke out into the environmental science field and started focusing a lot on our planet and animal conservation and environmental preservation. So I've been putting all my focus into that and getting my foot wet in that field.
That's awesome. So you have some mental illness in your life, right? You want to tell us about what you've been diagnosed with and a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, it is a journey. It is a journey. So I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. I started showing signs of it at really age 4. My mom has OCD as well, so she noticed it really basically at 4 when I couldn't decide on things and things were either do or die, very, extremes, but I wasn't officially diagnosed until I think I was 7. I went to a psychiatrist and got diagnosed because it got bad very fast, which we can definitely talk about, later about an overview. But yeah, it got bad very, very fast, and got diagnosed with that. And then really from the OCD, I became depressed at a very young age. I had depression basically at age 9, started having suicidal thoughts at age 10, which is almost unheard of at that age. At age 11, I developed anorexia nervosa, and I still deal with that. I don't starve myself, but I still have the body dysmorphia aspect of it. So I don't really look at my body, at least in the mirror, really. I can't wear tank top, or I can't wear crop tops or anything that shows my stomach because that's the targeted area. And then of course just overall anxiety from it all. But yeah, it's a whole cocktail of stuff.
Well, I think you had sort of an advantage because your mother had OCD and she was able to noticed that right away. I also have a daughter who has been diagnosed, and so we've always known to look out for that
Yeah.
in her.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
mhm.
Yeah, I definitely is an advantage, because before I even like really knew what was going on, she kind of could see those early signs and get me into help basically right when it started getting really bad. And also just like I said, I'm sure we'll touch on this a little bit later too, but just very grateful to have a parent who was so supportive and willing to get me help and willing to help me herself. She's been my rock. Like, I would not be here if it wasn't for her.
Yeah. So, what type of OCD do you have? Some people have germophobia, some people
Mm-hmm.
have, harm OCD. How does yours manifest itself?
Yeah, my psychiatrist said that this was the most severe case of OCD he ever saw because mine doesn't have a particular target area. I could get triggered by really anything and everything, and I have. When I was younger, I was very compulsional. Like, it was a lot of compulsions. But then as I kind of when I say grew up, I mean like once I got into like my preteens, then it became very obsessional, and it would focus on anything ranging from perfectionism to people. I would become obsessed with people, to just like everyday things and like conversations I had. I would replay the conversations and obsess over the conversations to everyday events. I mean, it really would be over anything. I would say the only area of OCD that I really didn't get is I did not get the germophobia part of it, and I did not get like the cleanliness. Like, I'm actually a very disorganized person. And I make a joke with myself like, oh, I wish I got that part of OCD. But
I'm like you. I'm not
yeah,
germophobic either. I don't have that
yeah,
part. So
yep,
I mean, I can see where it's a thing, but I don't relate to that at all.
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And so that's what's awesome about this show is there's probably some other people listening right now that are like, well, I'm not a germaphobe. And they're hearing from you who is not, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's awesome.
and it's really sad that the OCD is so stereotyped and stigmatized into being, well, if you are a germaphobe, then you have OCD, or vice versa. It's kind of like that is what OCD is when it's not. It's so much more complex. OCD can be about. I mean, again, my obsessions range from literally anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk a little bit about relationships in a little while about how
Mm-hmm.
does your better half relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not easy to live with. I don't know about you, but
Oh no,
sometimes I'm
no.
not easy to live with. So you became aware of it around 4.
Mm-hmm.
And can you describe any compulsions or rituals you had when you were younger?
Yeah, so really the main ones that I remember is when I would go into a store, I would just have to touch objects 4 times, and it had to be 4 times, and I would have to touch like all these different objects. So I would spend like 5 minutes in one aisle just touching all these objects. I felt like I couldn't move on to the next aisle. Another one that was really prevalent was how it's going to sound so gross, but
It's
it was,
okay.
yeah, I know it is, but it's just like saying it out loud. It's just so weird. But I would have to, whenever I ate anything, I would have to chew on my right side only, and then next bite chew only on my left side, and then the next bite chew only with my 4 front teeth, and then the next bite I would have to chew it, spit it out, look at it, and then eat it again. And that was like a complete ritual where if I did not do that, I could not continue with my meal. And that lasted a very long time. And it was complete hell. I mean, I hated doing it. And I never had the kind of OCD where I felt like if I didn't do this, my mom's going to die or I'm going to die. It wasn't that. It was just so much that if I didn't do it, it's just the anxiety was so intense that I had to do it. There wasn't necessarily a consequence besides just the overwhelming anxiety. And then like other compulsions, I could never go to like a 3D movie because I always had to constantly take my glasses off and compare the screen with and without the glasses, to the point where it ruined the movie for me because I was only focused on that. So just a variety of things, but that's really kind of the compulsions were a lot about. And then I think a lot of the compulsions were based around dance. As I grew up, dance was kind of like my outlet, but because it was my outlet, it became something that I became obsessed with and that I had to become perfect at, or else I was a complete failure. So that led to a lot of dancing when I didn't even want to. So I would dance at 3 a.m. because I felt like I wasn't good enough and I had to be practicing, and I would literally get up and dance at 3 a.m. and dance for 6 hours a day outside of dancing in classes because I wasn't good enough. And in a way, that basically is a compulsion of what I was thinking, the obsessional thought of I'm not good enough, I need to be in there working at it. And that's ultimately how I got out of the performing industry, was because it became just way too overwhelming and I couldn't handle it anymore. Because it wasn't a love at that point, it was a complete my whole self-worth was wrapped up in how I danced.
Was it difficult for you to leave the performing arena, or was it an easy answer?
Kind of like a yes and no. So I left. I still do perform, but I perform on the weekends. I'm with several entertainment companies, and some during like the Christmas season. So this time of year we have more gigs and whatnot. So I still do have it in my life because I still do love it, but just not full time. And it definitely, it was easy because I had such enough with it at that point, and I realized this is now fast forwarding way, because this happened last year, so I was 22 when this happened, so I had already gotten a lot better with my OCD. So I was able to really rationalize, like, this is not worth it, like this is not worth my life over, because I had a breakdown last year, a suicidal breakdown, and I'm like, I literally am debating ending my life over dance. Like, are you serious? And I had like a real heart to heart with myself. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So I stopped, and that was easy and freeing. But then as the weeks and months went on that I wasn't doing it, then my mind would try to twist it, being like, you're a quitter, you're a failure, like you just don't want to do it because you're afraid you're going to fail at it, and you're twisting it into things. And then of course then that became harder, because I then felt like, well, maybe I am a failure after all, and then I would have to realize, no, I'm not. So it's still an intrusive thoughts that come at me to this day, that I have, because I put my self-worth into it for so long that it was kind of like almost breaking a part of my identity, because I identified with being a performer. So it's definitely still something that I'm learning to accept, especially because I can say I am so much happier. Like, I genuinely can say I am so much happier. I love environmental science. I can have the worst day ever, and right when I see an animal's face, I'm happy and nothing else matters. And I'm so happy doing what I'm doing. And I even say to myself when I have those intrusive thoughts, like, why would I want to go back into a field that made me want to die? And so like, I'm rational enough to know that I made the right decision, but I definitely still deal with those intrusive thoughts that come in and be like, hey, like, you quit, you're a quitter, you're a quitter, you're a quitter.
But when you're performing now on weekends, is it still get to you, like, that you're not doing well at it? Or are you just performing for fun now, or for yourself?
Yeah, it's totally for fun. Yeah, it's totally for fun.
Yeah. So you're not having those thoughts about that?
No, the performing I'm doing now is, I'm still in some gigs I dance, but some gigs I'm really more just atmospheric and like what's it called, like party starting, like, in the middle of the crowd getting the party started. So it's much more fun work and freeing work and stuff. There are definitely still gigs that I do where it's like a choreographed dance routine, but again, like I choose which companies I work with, and I choose to work in like low stress, chill environments.
Absolutely.
Not the theme park industry and the cruise ship industry and the film industry. It's so cutthroat and competitive, and it's all about degrading yourself. And so I choose to be with companies that aren't like that. So that has, and if a company does become like that, which one has actually recently, I ended up quitting it because I'm like, I'm not going down this road again.
Good for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You need to give yourself a pat on the back for that and recognition. You're so young. You don't realize how lucky you are that you know about this now. It's so awesome. You've got your whole life ahead of you. It's going to be so amazing.
Thank you.
You're not going to be spending 20, 30 years trying to figure out what the heck's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I always was told, even from like age, I think even before I was even a proper teenager, I was always told that I have a very old soul. And yeah, very, always so much more advanced than where I'm actually at in life. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, though.
Is there anything else before you move on that you wanted to say about rituals or compulsions that you've had that, maybe someone else out there is like, oh, I used to do that too. And by the way, I wanted to say, this is probably not got anything to do with it, but you were saying the number 4 was always important. And when you were chewing, that was 4 different ways you were chewing.
How about that? That was.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, wonder if there's a correlation.
Maybe that was a subconscious thing too.
I mean, don't we wonder like why number 4?
Yeah.
Does number 4 have any significance to you at all? Probably not, because OCD is illogical.
Nope, it had no significance at all. I mean, I was born the 4th month of the year. I was born in April, but that's about it. That's really about it. But to answer your question, as far as any other things to say about compulsions, not really. Again, my OCD really is way more obsessional based than it is with compulsions and rituals. Again, most of the compulsions that I've had to do is just a result of the extreme thinking. The only one else that I would say that I had was I was really obsessed with an actor growing up, and to the point where he was my entire world. Like everything was about him, and I would make these collages of him and hang them up on my wall. And if I felt like the collages got quote unquote contaminated in any way, so meaning if anybody else but me breathed on them, then I would have to go into the bathroom with the collage, spray the entire bathroom down with Lysol, and disinfect the collage because I felt like it was contaminated. And it was so bad. It was terrible. I was crying as I was doing it. I hated doing it. But again, that compulsion was based on the actual obsession, which was this person. So really, the obsessional OCD would be something that I would want to start getting into, because that's really where mine is so intricate that I feel like it could be helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah. So that's my obsession, is with people. That's how mine manifests itself.
So rough. It's so rough.
And I think
all over the map.
It's hard to diagnose somebody when they don't have rituals.
Yeah,
it's in your head, and they have to go by what you're saying is in your head, because they can't see what's in your head.
Exactly.
You have to be so honest, right? When you go in there.
Oh yeah. Super
scary.
Yeah, so really how it started was, again, like I said, at age 4, if my mom and I were in a store, she was like, "Oh, you can pick out a toy." I could not decide. It was always decisions. Very, very young, I could not decide which toy, and it would get to the point where I would be literally having a full-on meltdown, hysterically crying in the middle of a store, literally losing my mind because I could not decide which toy to get, and it ended up with my mom saying, "You're not getting either toy," and and us leaving.
It was seen as misbehavior by other people around in the store.
Absolutely.
Look at this
Absolutely.
spoiled brat. She can't have both, so she's going to throw a fit. And that wasn't what it was at
Absolutely.
all.
Absolutely. And there was one time in particular that I remember so vividly, and so does my mom. We were at a party store, and I was getting a headband that had like, what do you call it? Like little bobbly hands on top of it. And there was between a purple one and a green one. And I was, same thing, was in front of the mirror trying on each one 50, 60, 70 times, hysterically crying. It was the exact same headband, it's a different color. Completely crying my eyes out, losing my mind. I mean, literally wanting to die over this decision. I remember wanting to die over this decision because if I did not make the right one, then that was it. And my grandma was there and she was saying to my mom, just let her get both. And my mom was like, no, she is not getting both, because my mom knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom said, you're not getting either. And we left. And it was really around there that we went to a psychologist at first, and the psychologist knew right away, like, first of all, my brain was so much more advanced than I was. So like my thinking was already on such a higher level, and she already like could tell like this is out of my expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went to a good maybe 7 or 8 visits with her, but she could tell that this needed further intervention. So really at the age of 7 is when I went to a psychiatrist, and really ages 7 to 10 is when it got really, really bad, because like my breakdowns would get way more frequent. Like, it would be about literally anything and everything. It got to the point where I could not leave my mom because she was the only thing that was basically keeping me sane. So I would, get out of the car to go to school in the morning and run back to the car and bang on the door and like beg her not to leave me. I would have to go to the counselor's office because they just thought I had like attachment issues, but I didn't. I was so reliant on her because I did not understand my head. All I knew was that I was thinking like crazy thoughts about, I would like be replaying things in my head, twisting things in my head about just random things that I don't even remember now, but it would just be random things, an encounter with a friend or uh, a show or whatever. It would just be random things that would take all. So all I knew was that I was not understanding what I was thinking. I was hysterically crying. I had these feelings of wanting to die. All I knew was that my mom was like my safe place. That's all I knew. And anytime that I was not with her, I felt like I was losing my mind. And at age 10, like I said, is when I became suicidal at age 10. And I remember even like saying to my mom, like, do you ever have thoughts of just like ending it? Like I literally said that at age 10.
Wow.
I mean, my OCD was so complex and it was so advanced. And it, like I said, it was over everything. And like really at age 10, all I was really thinking was, why am I thinking these thoughts that I don't even believe? Why am I thinking thoughts that don't make any sense to me? Why was I forced to do things I didn't want to do? Why was I miserable all the time? I have such a loving house. I have a good home. I have a lot of friends. Why am I so unhappy? Like, why am I just so unhappy? And and it just became to the point where I really didn't even know like what was reality and what was my thoughts. It came to that point where I just could not distinguish it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually started to wonder if, a little bit later on, like in my teens, I was actually starting to wonder if I had schizophrenia, because it was almost like a break from reality, because my thoughts were so intense. And it wasn't. It was just an extreme form of OCD, of obsessional thinking. And then to add fuel to the fire, at age 11, I became anorexic. I was also actively in dance class at that time, and I almost passed out during several rehearsals because I would not be eating. Sometimes I would eat. I remember one night in particular, I had 4 vegetarian chicken nuggets and a side of peas, and immediately after I ate that, I purged myself, and I mean, it was so bad. I was so terrified of food. I was mortified. I almost had to go to the hospital several times. My mom was anorexic when she was younger, and she said the one thing she never did was she never like stood in front of me and forced me to eat, because she taught me at a young age that that I can't always rely on someone to fight my battles for me, that I'm going to have to, it's going to come from within me. So she was always there, but she never let me be coddled. So I thought
Which is why she wouldn't let you have both of the headbands.
Exactly. And that's so important. And I was even like wondering when I was anorexic, I'm like, why aren't you forcing me to eat?
Right.
Like I literally asked her.
I was going to ask you, but you already answered that question. Did they, probe you constantly?
No.
Eat something. Yeah.
No, she didn't. And then really it was from age 12 to about 18, teenage years, that I lost all sight of what was real. I mean, I just was so in my head every second of every day. My thoughts took control of my entire day. Everything that I did, I criticized myself ad nauseum for. It was no matter what, really, at this point. I always needed constant reassurance that what I was thinking wasn't real, and if I didn't, and then I would get the reassurance, and I would twist the question around and try to get reassurance a different way, and I mean, it was literally like living in your own, like, what is it called, like a loop, just own personal loop of hell about every situation. And
How did you get through high school, Jaimi?
It was really hard. It was really, really hard. And actually, it was to the point really where I was always texting my mom throughout the day. And most of my high school experience was me in the bathroom crying. It really was. And this was actually this story in particular is middle school, but it did really go on into high school. I was missing so much class that because I was texting my mom, and my teacher pulled me aside, and this is so important. I hope more teachers do this, but my teacher pulled me aside and she said, "Are you okay?" Because she would notice I would go into the bathroom for like 30 minutes at a time. And she like, are you okay? Is everything all right? Like, why are you, not in class and stuff like that. And I just was very honest with her. I told her I am really suffering. I need my mom, and I don't want to be, and I'm not allowed to be on phone in class. So I leave and I talk to her, and she told me that I was allowed to have my phone out and text my mom, because I told her in depth what was that. I told her I'm really suffering. Like, I'm really suffering. So she let me have my phone out in class and text my mom. And then I said to her, well, what about the other students? Like, won't they be like pestering me about why I have it out? And she said, if they do, let me handle them. So she was an amazing teacher. And shout out to her. I mean, she was absolutely amazing. But really throughout high school, it was really me going throughout the day, texting my mom, and it would be finding outlets. So I would dance a lot, but again, I didn't really realize that dance was actually an obsession. To me, it still was in that phase where it was something I loved to do. And I didn't view it as an obsession yet. And so I danced a lot. I wrote a lot of poetry. I still had a lot of friends, because believe it or not, like, the amount that I was suffering, no one would believe it. Like, I was very popular. I had a lot of friends. I constantly was being asked to hang out, and I did. I could never sleep over, though, because I have this weird thing with sleep that I get like freaked out if I see other people sleep. That's another whole part of my OCD called misophonia. It's where like you get really agitated by like normal everyday functions like eating, drinking, sleeping, breathing, blinking. And I've had several of those. Breathing, sleeping, and blinking were always my big three things. But I couldn't sleep over, but I always, was hanging out with friends, and that kind of got my mind off of it. And kind of like anything to distract myself in the external world, really anything to distract myself is how I got through it. And in junior year of high school, that's when I really started performing very seriously. So I was performing every single night for like my sophomore and junior year and senior year of high school. So that really helped. It really did. As much as, I say that I got out of it because it became too much, it did. But at that time, that really was my saving outlet, was performing. That's what got me through it.
Yeah. Did your friends know you had OCD? Did you tell them?
One of them did, but only after a long time of us being friends. And she didn't really understand it, but she was very empathetic, so she could at least understand that I was suffering, even though she didn't actually understand OCD. My other friends, not really. I told a couple of them, but I never went into detail. So really, no.
Did that teacher know?
Yeah, the teacher knew. She was the only teacher that knew, though. No one else knew, and that was only because she called me out on it. Like, why are you missing so much class? Yeah. So really, it was hard, And looking back on it, I realized like just how strong I am, because that was hard to get through. That was so hard, and really, like, the big turning point for me, which I'm sure this is going to be a great segue, but the big turning point for me was at age 18, because that's when I tried to take my life over it.
So that was part 1 of my conversation with Jaimi McPeek. I hope you will join me next Monday, bright and early in the morning, for part 2. Until next time, everyone have a beautiful week and keep smiling.